Welcome to Scorched Earth and the general reading for the sign of Scorpio, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of May 2024. I hope you are well. We're using the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot for you today. Just before we begin, if the reading resonates and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that is available at the end. That's the first link in the description box. Second link in the description box is to the 3-month overviews that I did for each of the signs. They run from April to June, respectively. And obviously we're a little way through that, so those have been discounted accordingly. So if you haven't had a chance to have a look at them and you would like to, then link number 2. Link number 3. Oh, no, hang on. That's link number 3. Link number 2 is actually to my private community, the Order of the Phoenix. I got the order wrong there. You can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost beyond the membership fee and hang out with a truly extraordinary group of people. There's quite a bit going on over there. So if that's something that sounds like it will be of interest to you, that one is actually link number 2. Anyway, now I've cocked that up, let's get on with the reading. So let's flip you around. Can I have 3 cards for Scorpio, please? Whoa. So we have the Moon and we have the 7 of Pentacles. Interesting. For your recent past. What about current energy for Scorpio, please? Crikey. We have the King of Pentacles. And what's coming towards Scorpio, please, for May? We have the Knight of Swords. Interesting. So at the bottom of the deck, we have the Ace of Wands. We can certainly see, if not the beginnings of, then some preparation for some sort of new initiation, which may or may not be in the area of business, because we do have the King of Pentacles there. But then we should also be mindful of the fact that the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction occurred in the sign of Taurus just a couple of weeks ago. And that is very much about breaking yourself free from, what you have already built, so that you can push forwards in some sort of meaningful way in a new direction of your life. And the Ace of Wands for me often is talking about a new direction that our life is taking, whether voluntary or involuntary. I think it's voluntary, to be fair, because the Ace of Wands is creativity, it is passion, it is that ignition point where we start to feel really good about going in a particular direction, right? There's where things may have been somewhere a little bit repetitive, a little bit staid, a little bit old. There's a reinvigoration of something that is occurring when the Ace of Wands is around. So let's just get some clarifiers on the table about the Moon and the 7 of Pentacles, please. So there's that Knight of Swords again, putting in an appearance. We also have the Wheel of Fortune, interesting, and we have the 4 of Cups, which seems to link up quite nicely, to be honest, but we'll get into that in a second. Tell me about the King of Pentacles, please. So we have 4 of Swords and more Taurian energy, with the Empress putting in an appearance too. Tell me about this Knight of Swords. Oh, Lord. Let's get that from down there. We have the Knight of Wands and, oh goodness me, what's this? 7 of Wands sideways and the 9 of Wands sideways, with the Page of Swords now putting an appearance at the bottom of the deck. So there is progression, which we like. There is no, at least as far as I'm aware, there's no astrological correspondence with the Page of Swords, but it is an initiation. It's a starting point, and we have double cards that speak to that very process here. We've got, new actions, new behaviors, new experiences potentially being offered by the Ace of Wands. And we have a what's the word that I'm looking for? It's not exactly a coalescence, but a synthesis. Oh, let's go with that word. I like that word. A synthesis of old experiences and the potential for new experiences. The synthesis is happening in the mind rather than anywhere else, right? That's the beginning point, and we're seeing it kind of almost jolting forwards. Like there's something a bit like when you're Not sure this is a good analogy actually, but you know when you're on a roller coaster and you sit there and you feel that initial jolt forwards as the whole train begins to move. They do it a little bit smoother on trains, but on a roller coaster it's got that kind of jolty feel to it. It feels a little bit like you're being jolted forwards in some sort of way. And possibly there might be a little bit of discomfort with that, but not too much. I mean, even as I'm saying it, it doesn't feel that uncomfortable. It's just coming, you know? So if we start here with your recent past, we've got the moon and we've got the Seven of Pentacles in reverse. Now, the moon directs our attention inwards, always. On the rare occasion where it's referring to something outside of ourselves, it's generally, it speaks of a lack of clarity around something, or some sort of a fairly foggy movement forwards. It's like, I don't really know where I'm going. I don't really know what I'm doing. It's that kind of obfuscated view of the future. But I tend to read it as something that is very inwardly directed. So what we've got here is recently a lot of internal feeling around. Now, the Seven of Pentacles could relate to a situation that has been outside of you, or it can be the feeling around inside of you and going, do you know what, things are a little bit stuck in here. I would like things to move a little bit more than they are doing. There's a kind of unsticking that's going on internally. And it's supported here by the Knight of Swords, the Wheel of Fortune, and the Four of Cups. And I actually really like this combination here for you, because the Knight of Swords quite simply is the transmission of information. It's stuff moving around. Now that can be by way of, you know, you talking to other people, or you know, them talking to you. You know, it can be dynamic conversations that way. But it does have a very internal quality to it too. It's the quality of the thoughts that are moving around. Now, because things have felt like they've been a bit sticky, a little bit stuck, and there's a dislodging of certain things that are happening. And it could well be to do with the way that you see the world. Almost always it has the effect of that on whatever it is. But it seems to be rooted around the idea of, for a lot of you, for the idea of abandonment. Like this is an interpretation that I come back to with the Four of Cups quite often, because it can mean boredom and it can mean apathy, and that would absolutely align with what we see with the Seven of Pentacles. But it feels like it runs a little bit deeper than that. It's not just that we are not particularly satisfied with, you know, what's going on within or what's going on without. It's more of a realizing that you're coming up against the limits of your thinking, which can be a very, very powerful thing to do. And realizing that you've almost moved emotionally past that. And this synthesis that I was talking about the information that is now starting to feel like it's sparking around in your head, is your mind catching up with where your emotions have been, or your mind catching up with where your heart has been, something like that, right? Because the Wheel of Fortune is, for me, always a teaching moment. It's like, in this moment, there has been something really profound for you to see, acknowledge, and begin the process of understanding. And this is why these two these two characters from the sword suit are here. It's like there's a point of initiation. There's this point of synthesis where we're looking back on what we have experienced, and a realization that we don't want to be defined by that anymore. You know, for some of you, it might be the active rejection of labels and narratives that you have adhered to for your entire life. You know, that Uranian energy of wanting to break free from a certain pattern of thinking could have been very, very strong at this point. And what happens when we start to change things within ourselves is that we start to change the way that we want things to appear outside of us. And in fact, they do respond, like they do change outside of us too. Even, you know, just simply from that switch in perspective. There's something really strong here about rejecting a definition of self that you have subscribed to for a long time. And when I say a rejection of self, it's not actually a rejection of self, a rejection of a narrative of self. I'm not talking about the sort of things that usually, end up in shadow creation. I'm talking about a recognition that there has been a narrative that's been created. And actually, on some level, you've evolved so far past that. You've been waiting for your mind to catch up with it. And as your mind has caught up with it, as things are starting to make more sense, as you see parts of yourself, but moreover, you see that invisible ring that your narrative of self has cast around you, the less interested you are in perpetuating that. That may or may not have something to do with abandonment issues. It may or may not have, anything to do with the way that you possibly have rejected people in the past. There's something kind of profound about these cards here in terms of changing your perspective, but also turning you to meet your destiny. And I've talked about this before. When I was talking about New Year's resolutions and stuff with my twins, and about the reasons why they fail more often than not is because people just sort of transplant who they are now into this ideal situation where they'll be doing all of these things. The question you have to ask yourself is, why weren't you doing those things in the first place? What is it that magically shifts between December the 31st and January the 1st, that suddenly you are capable of doing these things that you would not find time for, or you did not, apply any kind of energy to? And the reason why New Year's resolutions generally fail, just sort of fade out after a while, is because the requisite work has not been done internally. Like I said, it's much more beneficial, I think, to set intentions and then, walk backwards and work out what kind of person you would need to be in order to achieve that thing over there. I remember when I started kickboxing, and I used to go like once a week and whatever, and then eventually I got put in for my first competition. I think I'd been training for about 8 or 9 months or something like that, and I got my arse handed to me, as you would expect. I turned up and there was nobody in my category, so I got moved up to the advanced category, and I got moved up like 3 weight divisions as well. And I ended up fighting somebody who was a second dan kickboxer, right? So obviously I was going to lose. But in that moment, what I saw in that moment of failure, if you want to look at it like that, was that there was no way on fucking earth I was going to win any medals if I was only training once a week. What I needed to do was really, really apply myself to that. And from that point on, I started going, I started sparring, and I fucking hated sparring, and then it became the thing that I loved the most. I really invested in becoming the kind of person that would win competitions. And indeed, the next year, I won, I think, all but one of the tournaments that I went into. I brought home the most gold for the club in that year. And I came second in the one that I didn't win. The point is turning yourself into the kind of person that would do the things that are kind of lurking around inside of you, right? The things that you want to be passionate about, the things that you want to be creative with, not turning yourself into an expert exactly, but there's something about that, right? I want to be the kind of person who does this thing routinely. What needs to change? What needs to change inside so that I can do that? For some of you, it's like literally simply the creation of space for yourself so that you can apply yourself to those things. For others, it's going to be a little twists and tweaks of these little internal narratives, Anyway, when we come into your current energy, we've got the King of Pentacles, the Four of Swords, and the Empress. And like I said, we've got double Taurus energy there. So potentially, with Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, we had double Taurus energy. Both of those planets sitting in those signs when they came together and had a little conversation, as they do with conjunctions. But, what a conjunction is it's not two planets just coming together and saying hello and then parting ways again. I mean, this is the beginning of a new cycle between those two planets, because everything runs in cycles. I mean, tarot runs in cycles, astrology runs in cycles, just about everything runs in cycles. So we've started a new 13 and a half, 14-year conversation or set of actions based on a conversation that the planets had together there. So what plays out over the next 13 or 14 years is going to be as a direct result of whatever it is that you have been shifting around this time in the course of April, and certainly bleeding into May too. And it feels like there's a solidity and a stability to not only what it is that you want to achieve, but the way that you are going about that. Now, as a fixed sign, that's not really a surprise, right? And Taurus is your opposite sign in the zodiac. So, whenever something, rattles one side of the axis, at least the vibrations are going to come through to the other side. But there's something quite stable and practical. I wouldn't necessarily just put it down to the financial and the material, but it's practical and it's resourceful about the way that you are now looking to move forwards. I mean, we've got that Four of Swords there, and the Four of Swords for me is lots of things. It talks about taking a break, it talks about taking a step back. It can talk about healing, actually, because it follows on directly from the Three of Swords. But there's a sort of objectivity that I'm seeing in that Four of Swords there. It's getting really objectively focused on the facts and the practicalities and the resources of whatever it is that you're trying to shift around in your life. It's that desire to take, the intention to take what is the desire internally, as a result of the changes that have occurred inside of you, right? The dispensing with of the internal narrative, or the adjustment of the internal narrative. There's something kind of curious about, like, what could I actually achieve if I really put my mind to it? And I think you've probably had that conversation with yourself quite a lot, Scorpio, over the course of your life. And you've done it. You've put yourself out there and you've done it. But the subtlety of what's happened here is, like I said, that invisible wall of the internal narrative, the internal critic, the internal sense of what you could achieve versus, somebody else, with the resources that you've had available. What we're talking about is an expansion of resources. And I don't feel like they're necessarily material. I think they're going to have their result in being material, but it's more than that. It's like, I've got resources inside of me that I haven't actually ever pulled out to the front for everybody to see. Like, I haven't really invested everything that I had available. I did I used what I thought I had available at the time, but now I'm starting to sense that there's much more out there. There's much more in the environment, the internal environment, that I can bring to the surface. I mean, as always, there's a pursuit of authenticity going on here for sure. But it's this curiosity. What if I could actually not be afraid of doing X, Y, Z? What if I actually just pushed a little harder and see what happened in terms of making my dreams come to reality? And the objectivity that's coming in here is because of the new information that you now have access to, because internal narrative and all that sort of stuff. So when we come into May, we've got the Knight of Swords, and I like the fact that he's in the upright. We've got the Knight of Wands, and I like the fact that he's in the upright too. And we also have the Seven of Wands and the Nine of Wands. Now, this is quite curious because these have come out sideways. And if you haven't seen my videos before, I do generally read cards when they turn up sideways. Which makes people, clutch their pearls all over. But I have a reason for it. I have two reasons for it, actually. The first is that either these energies are on the turn in some sort of way, right? So perhaps if I had pulled these cards a week ago, we might have seen them in that position. But there's something about the energy that is now starting to shift and turn around, right? Or maybe they've been this way and they're turning into the reverse. The other way I see that is that the cards have not quite committed either way. The energy is there, the potential is there, but it's not yet being fully utilized. So let's just have a look at these two cards and see what they mean in their upright presentation before we start any further, before we, go any further and decide whether or not they've committed or not. We've got the Seven of Wands and we've got the Nine of Wands. Now, that's what is that? Mars in Leo and Moon in Sagittarius, respectively, right? There's a heating up in May that actually feels incredibly beneficial. But let's go here. The Seven of Wands is often a defensive or guarded energy, right? We see this chap here up on high ground, trying to fight off these invisible assailants that we see here, right? And sometimes in some decks you see a little child behind them, and we've got that, sense of defense. But really, it's a relatively abstract scene because we don't really have the information. Now, is this someone who is being attacked? Or is this someone who's been shooting the mouth off and is then, reaping the consequences of being dreadful to people? We don't know. Is this a sense of, a kind of desire to fight the world because we have not yet quite accepted that we are allowed to receive things, right? And I know if you're anything like me, and I know for a fact that there are Scorpios out there who are like that. It's like, no, we don't get nice things. We don't deserve nice things. Excuse me. We're going to keep ourselves on the other side of this one. Don't get too fucking close because I need to steam and stew around in here and feel, crap about myself. Right? We've all been in that position at times, right? So it can kind of be noble or it can kind of be obstructive and difficult, right? It affects our relationships with other people. And it ultimately is a reflection of the relationship that we have with ourselves. So, and we've also got the Nine of Wands there, which is that rather hunted, rather guarded look of, is it over? It's not over. It's never over, right? It's that sense of waiting to be ambushed by something. Now, it can also talk about good boundaries and things like that, which is all really useful. But these cards both turned up sideways. And to be honest, the way that I'm looking at them makes me feel like not only are these energies on the turn, but there's a sense of you busting right through something in May. Because we had that Knight of Swords over there. We have it now as the main energy over here. So this was, the synthesis, perhaps the coalescence of a new set of ideas and working out how we can synthesize this into our lives, where we've got new information about the way that we work, new information about what we actually want from life, all that sort of stuff. And it's coming up front and center in May. It feels like it's almost like I really hate filler words and I use them all the time. I must stop. It's the energy of putting that front and center. We are now leading with the new information. It doesn't have a banner or anything like that, but perhaps if he did, it'd be attached to his back and it'd be like, hello, I am Scorpio with new information. I am Scorpio with a new sense of how I intend to interact with the world. And we have the Knight of Wands also there. Now, these are the two fastest moving knights in the deck. And we could say, if you wanted to take a flat interpretation, that perhaps there may be information that comes in that allows you to make some sort of spontaneous decision to jump on an opportunity that you have either created or is available to you, right? We could see that as a possibility for sure. But I actually feel like these two cards here are speaking to an alignment that over here you were aware wasn't happening, that is now absolutely blooming over here. There's an alignment of actions and thoughts, which is authentic, and we like that very much, right? It's leading with a truth, and it's your actions following that too. Now, why do I think that? Because we've got the Ace of Wands at the bottom of the deck, and that for me is often about changed behavior or new patterns of behavior. Like I said, it can talk about new passion and new creativity coming through. I think if you've recognized that there are aspects of your life that you find difficult to deal with, and the reason why you find them difficult to deal with is because they're boring as fuck and you want something a bit more interesting in your life, remember Uranus is that energy of shaking things up, then in May it could well be that you're either looking for new opportunities and you are ready to capitalize on them, or you are about to create new opportunities for yourself simply because you are authentically presenting someone who is aligned in words and actions. I feel like these cards are on the turn because I think for a long time, Scorpio, they've been in the upright for you, and what they're doing now is they're inverting. It's like there is no need to defend yourself from attack anymore. Now, that's not to say that you are defenseless. It's recognizing that where you thought you were under attack, actually that was you resonating in a state of fear, because somewhere deep down within you, it's like the idea that the next attack will be the one that finishes you off is something that I think has permeated through the Scorpio consciousness for an entire lifetime. Here, it's the recognition that actually you can be both aligned and authentic, and whatever it is that comes and acts as an obstacle or attempts to be an obstacle to whatever it is that you're doing can be quite simply systematically dismantled and moved through. Because the issue has never really been what was outside of you. The issue was that invisible wall with this kind of... I used to play a game with my kids a decade ago, Command and Conquer. And you could play as... or in the particular version that we played, you could play as America or China or... I can't even remember what the other countries were. There was like Afghanistan or something like that, right? So Afghanistan did a lot of like guerrilla tactics and whatnot. With the USA, it was always just like big weapons, just trying to overpower the enemy that way. China was really interesting because they had a lot of... there was a lot of subterfuge with that. And one of the things that they had was a propaganda tower that you could put on your wall. And not only would that fire up your troops... but when enemy troops came in, I'm sure it kind of confused them a little bit. They didn't really know what was going on. I might have just made that up. But either way, right, it kind of... it increased the effectiveness of your own troops. And why am I sharing this with you? Because I feel like you've had a propaganda tower on top of this invisible wall that has been perpetuating a certain internal narrative that tells you what you are, what you're capable of, what you can achieve. And you're starting to realize that it's been minimizing you. And you're done with it. You don't want that for yourself anymore. Because actually there is a world outside of the wall. There is a world outside of where you have found yourself, internally, spiritually, but materially too. And everything about May is not only good from a kind of material standpoint, because there's something that's being seeded here that has a long-term effect, and we see that here with the two Taurus cards. But then we've got this swifter moving energy of the Knight of Swords and the Knight of Wands, indicating an increase in your authenticity, an increase in your capacity, an increase in your ability to be able to make good on what is going on inside. Which makes me feel like May is actually a month that feels novel. Well, it will be a month that's novel. But it's a month that might feel like it actually takes you... there's that jolt. It's the jolt. It's the jolting forwards. There was a jolt forwards inside. And then there was some sort of like... settling of that energy. The jolt's coming again. In the best possible way. And the more open you are, the more authentic you are, about expressing what is actually important to you and expressing, maybe even this is a month for affirmations for people. And I'm not talking about you quietly murmuring them under your breath 24/7, or even standing in front of the mirror and saying, I am strong and all that sort of. I'm talking about like really put your back into it. Go to a quiet hill and screech it to the moon, you know, screech it to the sun, whatever. It's like, let that feeling really rush through you, because there's an expansion and it feels rapid. It's not unexpected per se, but I think it's going to surprise you with the strength of the jolt forwards. And the thing that you must recognize is that the power in that jolt is actually coming from you. And that in and of itself should open a whole new set of doors in your head too. All right, I like this. I'm really excited about this for you, Scorpio. So I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to go and do the extended, because I've been prattling on for half an hour. If you would like to join me there, you know what to do. It's link 1 and 2 in the description box. I'll get it right this time. But if this is where we part ways, that's absolutely fine. There's a lot of self-generated power that comes from the acceptance of there being much more to you than you have been able to access up until now. And the more you can give yourself to that awareness, the bigger the jolt will be. I heard Rick Levine describe the Uranus-Jupiter conjunction as somewhat like the ability to be able to walk through a door and take a quantum leap forwards. And I like that idea because there is a quantum leap forwards here. And it's not because Jupiter and Uranus waved at you. It's because you've discovered it within yourself, and that's always what this is about. Right? Remember that the planets impel, they do not compel. I love this. Right. Know that I love you very, very much, and I'll see you soon.